Palantir. Palantir is one of the biggest up and coming companies around for sure. Palantir Technology is a publicly traded American company that specializes in software platforms for big data analytics. So the name of the company, Palantir, for you nerds out there, is from Lord of the Rings. It's from the Seeing Stones. They were the indestructible spheres of crystal used for communication and seeing events, looking into sort of what the company does, looking into something and finding information that's collected. But these stones weren't reliable. If you had enough power and enough data, if you want to call that, then you could see visions, but you didn't know if they were real, if they were not, if it was the past or if it was the future. But that's why the company is called Palantir. It's kind of funny. So the co-founder, his name is Peter Thiel. He was one of the PayPal guys, so one of the engineers and the backers of PayPal. From that, there was a lot of good engineers from there, and also Elon Musk. And the CEO is Alex Karp. Funny enough that both of them were in school together in Stanford, so they knew each other from way back. So going back to Alex Karp and why he was pulled into it was kind of interesting because he's not a engineer per se. He got his degree from Stanford in law, and then he actually went to Europe because he didn't want to pay the money to go get his philosophy doctorate. And while he was over there, he opened up his own firm. He was pretty good at getting people to raise money, so that's kind of why he was brought in. But going back to the company, they're split up into three major projects. The Gotham project is more of your governments working with all those three letter indices. Your Foundry platform is your Morgan Stanley, your private companies, and then the Apollo is how they cross org all of the information, because this company came about after 9/11. And one of the big mistakes of 9/11 was there wasn't enough communication between all of the government agencies. So Palantir will collect, they use all that data that other companies collect, and they walk in and they're like, hey, I can actually use all of this raw data that you can't as a company, but Palantir can use that with their human analytic people and use it to make it more useful for them. So if you think about like a hospital, like how many beds do you need, the equipment that you need to be put out. Example for like when COVID happened, they helped out a ton for how everything is allocated. So the history started back in 2004 when Peter Thiel bankrolled um, Palantir with his friends from Stanford. And after 9/11 is when they actually started the company. And they're like, you know what? We can use all this data from fraud recognition to find people that are doing bad things. So what Palantir does is they will hone in on one person, and they will look at all of your patterns. They look at the money that you spend, where you go, where you travel, from all the data that's collected from everything you use for technology, and that's how they find bad guys and terrorists. So back then they were struggling to find people to invest into them because it was a venture capital kind of company, and people were like, this isn't going to work. No one's going to let you use all this data information. But Peter Thiel used $30 million of his own money, and they got backing from the government, a couple million, to um, start the company and get it rolling. They used his intellectual augmentation, which is effectively using the computers, all the data, and humans that can sift through all the data, because AI, they've been using AI for a long time. That's why they're a big player in AI. But it's not at a point where you can just press go and it happens. The human factor is still huge, and that's why everyone can't do it, because you still need those good engineers, those good people behind you to make sure that everything is going in the right direction. So Palantir will hone in on someone. It's like, I think this is a red flag person. If it is a terrorist, if it is someone of high concern, a criminal, that they've already looked at the data and it's like, you know what, this guy has thrown up so many red flags that we're going to go look. So it's not just a wide scope, a wide net that they cast on a person. No, they look at pinpoint one person, look at all of his travels, look at all of his bank information, look at everything he looks up on the internet and all that. And that's when they find out if a person is doing something right or wrong, and then that's how they hone in on them, and that's how they find a lot of terrorists. And when back in Trump's administration, they used Palantir to track illegals coming from the border, and they found a lot of drug dealers and a lot of human traffickers with that. But Palantir, before its first big break, and hopefully, a couple of their big breaks, they're pretty well known, but it wasn't easy for them to get into the government. If you work for the government or you have any ties to the government, getting a government contract is a super hard thing to do. And once you have it, it's hard to get, like, they latch onto it and they don't want to change. The government never wants to change anything. So what Palantir was doing was they were going to the army and giving them all this free technology, and the soldiers loved it. They had a 96% up rate, or upvote, that they wanted it, but the higher ups were like, no, we have our own thing going on. And right when Palantir wanted to start bidding for the government actually came up with their own Palantir data analytics software, like just ironically at the same time. And they threw millions and millions of dollars. I think it was like $90 million into it. So Palantir wasn't able, they didn't let Palantir bid, because when you go into a government contract, they had to put out a bid, and they did not let Palantir into it. So when they went into it, they didn't have a fair footing. So funny enough that they actually sued the government, and they won because it was not fair. So after that, then they got their fair role, and it they let them in. So they got the contract. They got a couple little small contracts, and in 2009, 2010, they had a big breakthrough where they uncovered the ghost net and shadow networks. These were networks that were targeting computers in 103 different countries, including the Dalai Lama's computer. They found these people and they stopped them. And another example is, it's not it's not 100% confirmed, and that's one thing about Palantir, is they're like shrouded in a little mystery, and it's not like they have not taken credit for this, but they people say that they are the ones that found Osama bin Laden. And even Alex Karp is like, we can't say if we did or we can't, or if we didn't. But one example is, they found that one village where a group of people were at, they were in charge of most of the attacks in Afghanistan. And they had specialists from all over the world look at all the patterns of this one small village, and they took down all these people that were a huge hitters in Afghanistan. So after these big breakthroughs, all the government contracts started flowing in. Every three-letter agency that you can think of wanted a piece of Palantir, and it got so big that Airbus used Palantir technology to start building airplanes. This was back in 2019. So what happens after 2019? 2020. COVID breaks out, and that stopped all of their airplanes that they were making. But they went back in and they actually helped the government with tracking COVID viruses breakouts and where they were coming from and how to stop them, and everything with hospitals, the transportation, and everything. So after this, they got hundreds of millions of dollars of backing. And in 2019, they were worth over 35 billion dollars. And they had people like JP Morgan come in. They had, like I said, Airbus, and they helped with air traffic controlling and everything like that. Palantir got food contracts, everything you could possibly think of. But when you think of AI and data collection, most Americans think about their safety. How is their information being used? Like I said before, it's a pinpointed, very well documented, because there are when you get sued or people are looking for you, or say if you're doing anything bad and people are trying to target you, you will have like PIs or people that investigate you, and they will just say, "Here's the information," and that's it. Like they find evidence, and that's it. Like what Palantir actually does is they say that we are doing this for this reason, and it's well documented. It's in their technology, it's in their platforms, so you can't you can't get grabbed up by anything else. You can't get charged for anything else. This is strictly looking for bad people doing bad things that cast red flags, like terrorists. So the way Alex Karp talks about terrorists is he talks about them as entrepreneurs. So he says there are good entrepreneurs and there are bad entrepreneurs. But once a terrorist gets caught by them with the technology that they use, tracking their patterns, their monies, how they spend their money, their finances, how they got caught, good terrorists, like how he says, good entrepreneurs learn from those mistakes. So Palantir is constantly evolving. So once they get caught, they won't make the same mistake twice. It's not a static thing. And most things that before this was everything was static, that Palantir is something that's always changing. And that's how they route out and get all these bad terrorists. And that was back in 2000. So I've talked about them all the way up until 2020. So they're actually right now helping out in Ukraine and Russia. So before Russia invaded Ukraine and all that, the war broke out and everything, there were Russian people trying to solicit Alex Karp twice. And he actually had to go to the United States government. And he's like, hey, just let you guys know, I am being solicited for Russia, just to let you know. And after that happened, boom. Oh, well, after that happened, then boom, they got attacked and the Russian war started. And he told them about this because he didn't want to be liable. And then after they attacked, he actually helped them. He like Palantir can. They've been tracking all of the ground assets, all the people coming in, and using every satellite and all the data from when military movements are happening, and they can pinpoint when attacks are going to happen. And they've been doing this in the Middle East and everywhere. So they are actually stopping a military movement before it happens with just tracking patterns. And from satellites, from things being built, they can be like, hey, there's a military installation being built here. Boom, and they stop it. Palantir is one of the biggest growing military and commercial AI data collecting industries out there right now, and they're only getting better. Their AI has been working for the last 20 years. They are a 20-year-old company, and if you look at the stock right now, it's at the highest that it's been. I think in the last year, it's been up over 100%. So it is a great stock and a great company to get into, and they're only going to get bigger. It's going to take off pretty soon. But that's basically what they are doing as a company and how in depth that they have in everything. And at first they were getting criticized because they only had military and government contracts. Now they're getting contracts from everywhere. Now their commercial contracts are bigger than their government contracts. So it's definitely something to look after. And Palantir is huge.